Former Win Corp executive Rod Hockey has taken the company to court claiming compensation after his role was made redundant. There's been some explosive allegations made against Win's billionaire owner Bruce Gordon in this legal battle. James Manning from Mediaweek has the details. James, yeah, it's quite stunning, some of the things that have been said in court.
Yeah, Rod Hockey, former executive, said his job was made redundant. He was offered some other roles, but he didn't think it was quite, what he should have been offered. And I think he's arguing for close to $400,000 in compensation. It's been 3 days of evidence given in the hearings so far. I think it's all the final submissions have been in, and they're just waiting for the court to give a decision now. But it's been pretty messy. It's been called a internal soap opera. Given you a TV broadcast, and it's quite it's a colourful way to describe it, but it's quite accurate given on some of the evidence that's been given. And yeah, it's just not a good look for the company, you wouldn't have thought. Something they perhaps could have avoided.
This isn't the first case either of a former senior executive taking Win to court either.
Yeah, David Buderak, former chief executive, has gone down that path before, and we talk about often on the show, the run-ins companies have with their employees, and sometimes it's the company after the employee, and sometimes it's the employee after the company. So it happens a fair bit.
Now, just in terms of obviously the media regulation debate that we have had recently in Australia, New Zealand now having one of its own too, with a law commission recommending a body to oversee broadcast, print and digital media. Yeah,
they think it's probably a good idea to have one, control over all the media. You can see that it would have benefits, I guess. This is again, it's democracies have been reviewing the way that media has been handled post-Levinson, if you like. New Zealand's also seen, we've had a couple of inquiries here, Finkelstein, but there's some thought in New Zealand they were also wanting their media regulator to catch some of the people who so far hadn't been under the net of media regulation. I guess a lot of the online people, whether it's bloggers, news websites, things like that in the old sort of wording of rules and regulations hadn't been thought of.
Got to ask you about sports rights too, because there's still quite a battle to be had here. 10, we're hearing, fighting hard for the cricket rights, and 7 lobbying a preemptive bid to keep the tennis.
Yeah, the cricket rights definitely seem a little war there between the incumbent, which is 9, who also has the last right, so they're the favoured. So, for them to give up, they'd have to be beaten by a much bigger bid and think, gee, it's just not in our business plan to offer this much money. So they're sort of thought to be going to continue to hold on to those rights. But 10's put in, I think they've put their hand up something around about 350 million so far, which is significantly more than 9's been paying. So that could get a little bit messy. Although we heard from Tim Warner earlier this year that 7 is involved if the price is right. So they're probably sitting on the sidelines and just wondering, yeah, look, should we get involved or not? But they'd need, cricket, it's a lot of airtime, and they'd need to think, gee, can we really fit it in? We've already got the Australian Open, but 10, it's right up their ball. But and as you said, the tennis, the Australian Open, that's up for negotiation too. And maybe 7 have had it a little bit cheaply, perhaps, in the past. So there could be some competition to push that price a little higher. But then again, it is just that one fortnight.
Just in terms of sport as well, Tom Waterhouse to face questions from a parliamentary committee over this NRL deal with the 9 network.
Yeah, that's already started some of those hearings, and the NRL's come out and admitted, yeah, look, it didn't go as well as we thought it should have, and they've asked, I think, Waterhouse and 9 to pull back some of that association, so you won't be seeing as much as Tom Waterhouse on there. Created a lot of negative comment especially on social media. How much were the fans really upset by that? We're not sure. We heard from Foxtel that, look, they haven't been getting that many complaints about their sort of the sports betting they have on air.
All right. Just some other news as well, and we've been seeing a number of publishers rolling out new looks and redesigns of products, and the latest News Limited's the Sunday Times and Perth Now offerings.
Sure, yeah. News Limited in Perth, their Metro papers restricted to the Sunday Times, so that's been given a big refresh. And also the Perth Now, the big website they run there. Of course, that runs 7 days a week. A big spruce up as well, and perhaps a bit of a forerunner to introductions of paywalls around the country. We think there'll be one on Perth Now eventually too. A little bit harder for them perhaps because they only have the once a week newspaper, so they really need to make that website a little bit perhaps a stronger offering than their other websites around the country.
Just turning to radio and some really good figures for sales of digital radios.
Yeah, look, they do a digital radio report once a year, Commercial Radio Australia, just with a big total update. Close to 200,000 receivers sold in the last 4 months, so they spruiking that as pretty good news. 1.2 million since launch. That's up about 13% year on year, so it's pretty good figures for them. We're also getting the first figures through on motor vehicles sold with digital radios in them. It's been pretty hard to find a car over the past few years that has a digital radio in it. It's getting more widespread now on the imported vehicles, a couple of local manufactured too, so about 14,000 so far, so it's not bad.
Now, Sounds Alliance, tell us a bit more about this, launching in the US, in the mix.com in the US, start of a global rollout?
Yeah, look, it's a youth-focused music websites is the easy way to it's off the radar a bit for traditional media players, but it does very well in the sort of youth audience they target. In the Mix is a big one they have. They just launched that in the US. They've launched something just last week called junkie.com, sort of a pop culture site, if you like. So they're going very hard on that, and it looks like it could be an interesting model that they can roll out globally now after they've sort of got a good operating base in Australia.
Okay, let's have a look at TV now, the free-to-air top 10 ratings for week 12 first. And James, as you said last week, it's all about the block.
Absolutely,
in these ratings.
yeah. Look, it's big reality formats have really dominated this pre-Easter 6 weeks rating period, especially for 7 and 9.
And yeah, obviously,
again, I think the whole top 10 is virtually all the just the big reality TV shows, except the Seven's Drama, Back to the Rafters, which has been doing pretty good for them.
Let's have a look at the top 10 for subscription TV for week 12. NRL top 3, AFL games there at 4 and 5.
A couple of things in the bottom half of that top 10. I think Selling Houses Australia is a perennial favourite there, and I think Matty John's Fox Sports show, which has been doing pretty good business for him, that's crept into the top 10 too. At the moment, that goes to air after a Monday night NRL game, so it's great scheduling.
Just looking, I guess, at some of the news now, we're at that sort of Easter break point. You know, how have the big networks been faring?
Yeah, well, Seven's really dominated the space since they've launched My Kitchen Rules. At the start of the year, does fantastic business, and they have that tennis 2 weeks in January. Use it as a great promotional vehicle, as well as getting big audiences watching the sport. Helps push some of that audience through to their post-tennis launches. My Kitchen Rules does fantastic business. 9 would have to be very happy though. That bit of a spoiler, if you like, the Block All Stars. They haven't had a block that early in the year before, and it really went head to head with My Kitchen Rules. And although it didn't seem to dent My Kitchen Rules figures that much, it certainly. It might have held it back a little. It gave 9 some big audiences and really put the pressure on 10. Stopped some of there, like the MasterChef, the professionals.
Some other news as well, and we've seen the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards. Just take us through the winners and how the awards are being integrated for Australian viewers.
Well, it's the US Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, but they use it as a global event now, if you like. They integrate some of their other brands around the world. They used to have an Australian Kids' Choice Awards. They stopped that, I think, 2 years ago. We haven't had that for a while, but they have some Australian categories they sort of integrate into that US broadcast, and that it does pretty well for them. Got some good numbers on the weekend when it was run. Local winners, I think One Direction won a couple of categories, favourite with Australian viewers.
I'm going to ask you too about the TV Week Logies coming up, and news that Brian Henderson's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Yeah,
it's amazing because he used to be a bit of a regular in TV Week back in the 60s, and here he is all these years later. He was a sort of a host of a music show, if you like, Bandstand back in the 60s, segued into become, such an icon of Nine's News over the years, their Sydney News, and he's going to finally make it into the Hall of Fame, which is great.
Got to ask you about Adam Boland too. He's spoken briefly about what his plans are for the breakfast and morning
we heard a little
slots.
bit. We were surprised at the time when 10 knocked their breakfast show on the head that they said, look, we might give it another try. So they've got Adam Boland on board now, and yep, they're going to be sort of trying to get back into that space. They identified, I think we've talked before about $100 million in ad revenue they're written every year. 10 wasn't getting much of that, so they're still after some of those dollars. And Adam looks like he'll be developing not only a breakfast show, but also a morning program. So something to take viewers right through that sort of 6 a.m. to midday, if you like. 10 does reasonably well in that early afternoon, so if they can get something happening there, it's good news for them. And again, try and get some of those audiences to get into that prime time, which is the real main game.
So post-Easter, will we see lots of new shows start to be rolled out overall across the broadcasters?
Yeah, we will. We haven't heard a lot. Nine are sort of haven't revealed their hand too much. We're expecting the Voice to go. Will it go the straight? I mean, the post-Easter ratings kick off with the Logies on the Sunday night. I think it's April the 7th is the date. We're expecting the Voice. I think last year it launched, was either Logies night or the night after the Logies, but it did very well. Could it be the same thing this year? Nine aren't revealing yet what's going to happen, but it'd be interesting to see if we get a few nights of the Voice head-to-head with My Kitchen Rules. Haven't heard a lot from 10. The Biggest Loser, bit of a slow start, but it's really picked up some speed through this Easter break so far without the other big franchises on air at 7 and 9. So if the people sampling and getting used to The Biggest Loser again stay post-Easter, it could be good news for 10.
Foxtel 13th Street Channel is introducing a new interactive mystery for Easter. What's this about?
Launched this week. It's called Precinct 13, so it's the mystery channel, if you like. 13th Street runs a lot of mystery dramas and that. So they've got a website they've set up and they've got a crime's being committed there, and there's a few clues, so you can try and solve this crime online. And it just further engages the viewer with the channel. Maybe targets a little younger. Some of their viewers might be, it's an older demo who watches that channel. So some interesting stuff online. There's a little carrot of a $5,000 prize if you can solve the crime.
And just quickly as well, Game of Thrones launching on Foxtel's Showcase channel on Monday, direct from the US.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz about that. The third series, a lot of hardcore fans been waiting for this one. And it's some of the key programming coming soon on some of the subscription TV channels. I think Da Vinci's Demons is another one coming soon to watch out for on FX. That starts about mid-April.
And Grand Designs Revisited as well, coming through too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. James, as always, thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Brian.
James Manning there from Mediaweek. From the team here, that's all we've got time for. Thanks for your company.